Component 3, Upper 6, in-class questions. Question 2. Oxygen dissociation curves for human haemoglobin and for the parasitic worm Ascaris lumbricoides. And our typical S-shaped sigmoidal curves there. And we've got increasing oxygen concentration on the bottom and the percentage saturation hemoglobin on the side. So things that we expect there. We've extended this quite far this way, this line, and there's a shaded area at the top. You might not be able to see very well. People living at altitudes between sea level and approximately 5,000 meters. So there's sea level would be across here somewhere to the right. So lots of oxygen. Probably about here, I don't know, and 5,000 meters, which would be somewhere over here. Human health is not affected until the percentage saturation falls below 95%. So there's our 95% there. Explain the advantage to humans of having the oxygen dissociation curve in the shaded region of the graph. Well, it's just told us that 95% is important, and so our oxygen saturation stays above 95%. So it's important that O2 saturation stays above 95%. Other ways, to think about that is, it enables these humans to live at altitude. Because the oxygen affinity stays high, even when we get up to 1,500 meters. Suggest how people become adapted to living at very high altitudes. Well, you don't need to suggest, because I think it's in your notes somewhere. We get more red blood cells and more hemoglobin, or perhaps the hemoglobin has an increased affinity for oxygen, but probably not. That might be in other species. So for us, this is why athletes train at altitude. Increased red blood cell count, or more hemoglobin. The MARC scheme has got increased affinity for oxygen, but those two are the more obvious answers. Explain why the parasitic worm has an oxygen dissociation curve as shown. Well, this is a bit more straightforward. It's to the left, so it's got a higher affinity. And where does it live? Well, it lives in a place in the gut where lots of metabolic processes going on, so oxygen levels are being reduced. So with these curves, if you've got a curve to the left or the right, I'd always say higher or lower affinity, whichever one it is. It's probably going to be one of the two marks. So the environment has a low concentration of oxygen. It's highly anaerobic, and the hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen. Or words to that effect, can absorb oxygen even at the lower partial pressure. So that's a straightforward story there. Here's another story about crabs. I have another molecule that we've never heard of, hemocyanin, and used for a similar sort of function. Similar, just a different metal. These are described as convergent evolution. So this is going to your kind of biodiversity topic when you were looking for evidence of common ancestors and things like that. And so convergent, this is where we looked at analogous features, things like the wings of bats and birds. So same function, but different origin. So these have evolved separately. E.g. analogous structures or molecules. Now we've got 2 marks there, but for a similar function. So they've evolved separately, but eventually have come to the same sort of function. The graph shows the effect of temperature on the dissociation of hemocyanin, so the same sort of shaped graph, partial pressure, saturation, here we go. Crabs are often found in rock pools on the Welsh coast. Remember, this is the Welsh board that have written these. And as temperature increases, reduces the oxygen content of the water. So gases dissolve less as temperature increases, as you might have done in chemistry. What effect does an increase in temperature have on the partial pressure of oxygen, at which hemocyanin becomes 96%? Oh, wow, where's 96% on here? Yikes. This is 4 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we were putting, we don't really need to do this, but I'm going to show you anyway. And 96%. I'll have 4 squares for 10, so that's 95 is there. So it's probably about there. And then that's 96% saturated, and then increase the temperature. So we're going, that's where the graph is going. As we increase the temperature, that's at 96%. This doesn't actually need numbers, but we could say, what effect does it have on the partial pressure? Well, we could say it goes from about 2.5 to 3.5 kilopascals needed. But actually, you could do that, but it actually just wants it in words. So as temperature rises, a higher partial pressure of oxygen needed to reach 96% saturation. And it would go from 2.5 to 3.5 on that diagram. The crab is living in water with partial pressure of 4. It's actually there. And the partial pressure of oxygen in its tissues is 2.5. There. State an advantage to the crab when the temperature rises. So it's set you up as this question. If the temperature rises, what's this oxygen going to do? Well, it's going to be released. So if the curve kind of moves to the right, oxygen will be released. So as temperature rises, more oxygen released. And it says state an advantage. It's only 1 mark, But yeah, if this was 2 marks, it would be, you know, for aerobic respiration, etc., or more oxygen unloaded might be another way of saying it. Quite often there's a lot of questions like this where the curve kind of moves to the right and it asks you for the advantage, and it's nearly always more oxygen being released for aerobic respiration. 8 marks.